She was called the living Barbie. Soft blonde waves, crystal blue eyes, a Versace dress that hugged every flawless curve. Claudia Schiffer wasn't a model, she was the model. In the 1990s, she didn't just walk runways. She floated, as if time paused to admire her. Gianni Versace adored her. Karl Lagerfeld called her the new face of Chanel. She fronted every iconic Guess campaign, graced over 1,000 magazine covers, and stood tall beside the likes of Naomi, Cindy, Linda, and Christy, the Big Five. But off the runway, Claudia said nothing. No headlines, no scandals, no chaos. She disappeared quietly from the spotlight, as if vanishing was her final act of elegance. Because maybe perfection comes at a cost. She wasn't loud enough, wild enough, broken enough. And the world, craving cracks to relate to, began to look away. They didn't believe someone like Claudia could feel sadness, or loneliness, or exhaustion from having to be flawless, all the time. But that's the tragedy of being a living doll. No one listens for your pain, because they think you were made to be silent. Before the lights, before the lenses, Claudia Schiffer was just a quiet girl from Rheinberg, a small conservative town in West Germany with more cows than cameras. Born on August 25, 1970, to a lawyer father and a homemaker mother, Claudia didn't dream of fame. She was painfully shy. Her goal was to become a tax lawyer, like her dad. She was tall, thin, awkward, and she didn't feel beautiful. In school, she kept to herself. While other girls chased attention, Claudia read books and avoided mirrors. She once said, "I was never the pretty one. I was invisible." Everything changed at age 17. One evening, while out at a nightclub in Dusseldorf, she was approached by a modeling scout from Metropolitan Models. At first, she thought it was a prank. Modeling, her, but curiosity led to a test shoot. And that one shoot led to Paris. Within weeks, Claudia was on a plane to France. She didn't speak the language. She had never worn designer clothes. She was terrified. But the camera saw something she didn't. That shy girl from Rheinberg had presence. Her first breakthrough came in 1989 with a Guess jeans campaign, photographed by Ellen von Unwerth. The result? Explosive. Her Bardot-like features, icy stare, and untouched elegance made her a sensation almost overnight. Americans adored her. Europe bowed. But behind that meteoric rise was still the same quiet girl, now in foreign cities, working 16-hour days, expected to smile, perform, and be perfect. And something even more difficult had begun. She was no longer invisible, but now everyone was looking at her, and no one truly saw her. Claudia Schiffer's breakthrough wasn't loud or sudden. It was hypnotic, like a face that quietly refuses to leave your mind. After the success of her Guess campaign in 1989, Claudia became the face of the brand. So much so that Guess founder Paul Marciano later said, "Schiffer was a turning point of Guess. She was a turning point of Ellen's career. Guess was a turning point of a life for Claudia." Soon after, fashion capitals lined up to claim her. Karl Lagerfeld took her under his wing at Chanel, declaring her the embodiment of the new femininity. Gianni Versace dressed her like a goddess. Valentino called her a modern myth. And photographers couldn't get enough. Herb Ritz, Ellen von Unwerth, Richard Avedon. She didn't just look good in clothes, she transformed them. By the early 90s, Claudia Schiffer had become a pillar of the supermodel era, a time when models weren't just models. They were celebrities, cultural forces, icons. She walked for every major designer. She appeared on over 1,000 magazine covers, including 16 international editions of Vogue. She became the global ambassador for L'Oreal and the face of Chanel fragrances. Yet, unlike Naomi or Cindy, Claudia didn't have the loudest voice. She didn't rebel, didn't confront the press, didn't flirt with scandal. She was poised, polite, a German perfectionist raised on restraint. And it was that very silence that fascinated the public and the industry. But fascination soon turned to distance, because the same calmness that made her seem untouchable also made her feel unknowable. In the fashion world's hunger for edge, Claudia became a paradox. Everywhere, but out of reach. Admired, but not embraced. People didn't gossip about her. They just stared, like a painting behind glass. And while Claudia was becoming the most photographed woman in the world, a new question began to surface. Was she famous because people adored her? Or because she represented something they couldn't quite touch, and maybe never would? By the mid-1990s, Claudia Schiffer wasn't just a model, she was a monument. She had reached a level of global recognition that only a handful of living people ever experience. Her face was on buses, billboards, magazine racks, TV screens, and perfume counters. She became the first model to appear on the covers of Vanity Fair, Rolling Stone, People. She walked for every major designer, often both opening and closing shows. She could earn $50,000 a day, and brands paid millions to be associated with her image. But Claudia didn't chase fame. Fame came to her, and then refused to let go. Designers loved her because she delivered perfection. No drama, no delay, no diva behavior. She memorized entire show sequences, nailed every camera angle, and never complained. She was the dream. But dreams, as we know, are silent. And that silence began to echo. While other supermodels like Naomi Campbell or Linda Evangelista courted controversy or made headlines for their outspoken nature, Claudia was always composed, graceful, predictable. For some, that made her admirable. For others, it made her boring. Tabloids began to speculate. Is Claudia too perfect? Is she cold? The press dubbed her the Ice Queen and Barbie come to life. There were whispers that she was robotic, untouchable, emotionless. It didn't help that Claudia rarely gave intimate interviews. She didn't reveal much of herself, not out of arrogance, but because she never saw the need. She was a professional, a perfectionist. She believed the work should speak louder than her words. But in an era obsessed with relatability, Claudia's elegance became misunderstood as distance. She was no longer the muse. She was the mannequin. Then came her high-profile relationship with magician David Copperfield. To many, it was surreal. The icy supermodel and the theatrical illusionist. Tabloids mocked the couple, claiming it was staged. A PR stunt, a fantasy gone wrong. They dated for 6 years. Claudia rarely spoke about it. The world filled in the blanks. And slowly, the spotlight she had once dominated began to fade. You could still find her on covers. She was still walking, still stunning, but the industry had shifted. Louder voices, grittier aesthetics, new faces. Claudia had built a career on silence, poise, and control. But now, the world wanted chaos, vulnerability, edges that bled. And the woman who had been everywhere began to step quietly into the background. There was no scandal, no breakdown, no dramatic tabloid collapse. Claudia Schiffer didn't fall from grace. She simply drifted, further and further from the world that once worshipped her. As the late 90s approached, fashion had begun to change. The heroin chic era was in full swing. Faces grew edgier, bodies thinner, campaigns darker, grittier, angrier. The era of the supermodel was fading, replaced by actresses, pop stars, and anti-models with stories to tell and chaos to show. And Claudia? She remained exactly as she had always been, poised, polished, perfect. But in a world that now craved vulnerability and imperfection, her silence became a target. She was labeled too polished to be human. Commentators questioned if she ever had a real opinion, if she ever got angry, if she had ever suffered. The answer, of course, was yes. But Claudia never played that card. And perhaps that was her quiet rebellion, refusing to perform her pain for attention. What the world didn't see was the immense pressure behind her calm exterior, the expectations to remain ageless, graceful, flawless, year after year, the emotional weight of being constantly looked at, yet never truly seen, the exhaustion of a career where your value is measured in beauty, and your beauty is expected to never change. Then there was the loneliness. At the height of her fame, Claudia had hundreds of people around her, stylists, managers, photographers, agents, but few who truly knew her. She once admitted in a rare interview, "There were years when I went from country to country, day after day, with barely a conversation that wasn't about clothes or scheduling." Even her most public relationship with magician David Copperfield became the subject of cruel speculation. The media called it the illusionist's greatest trick, mocking the idea that someone like Claudia could fall for someone so odd. The pressure to prove their love was real became unbearable. The relationship ended quietly, after 6 years. And when it did, Claudia, still young, still beautiful, still in demand, made a decision few understood. She walked away. Not with a press release, not with a scandal, but with the same calm precision that had defined her entire career. She stepped out of the fashion cyclone and into something no one expected: privacy. She settled in England, started a family with film director Matthew Vaughn, had 3 children, planted roots. She stopped chasing magazine covers and instead focused on building a quiet, steady life far from the catwalk. And the world? It barely noticed her leave, because that was the cost of being perfect for so long. When you don't show your cracks, people assume you never break. When you're always strong, they forget to ask if you're tired. Claudia didn't collapse. She chose something even rarer in the world of fashion. She chose peace. Claudia Schiffer never planned a comeback. She didn't stage a dramatic return to the runway. She didn't write a tell-all memoir or seek validation from the fashion industry she'd quietly walked away from. She simply lived. While the world shifted to social media and fast fashion, Claudia built a life rooted in stability. She married Matthew Vaughn, the British film director known for Kingsman and X-Men, First Class, and settled into the English countryside. Together, they raised 3 children, far from the flashing bulbs and backstage chaos. For a while, she was completely absent from the public eye. No interviews, no campaigns, no events. And then, quietly, naturally, she reappeared. Not because she needed to, but because the industry had finally caught up to her. In the late 2000s and teens and early 2000s and 20s, fashion began to look back. Nostalgia for the supermodel era grew. Claudia, once considered too polished, was now viewed as timeless. Versace brought her back for a legendary show alongside Naomi and Cindy. Balmain cast her in a retro campaign that celebrated her legacy without trying to modernize her. She wasn't making a comeback. She was reminding the world of who she had always been. And this time, she didn't need to be everywhere. She didn't need to prove herself. She had nothing to sell except the authenticity she'd quietly preserved for decades. In interviews, she spoke with more openness than ever before, but still on her own terms. She discussed the modeling industry's pressures, aging in the spotlight, and the value of privacy. She even launched projects behind the scenes, curating exhibitions on fashion photography and sharing her archives, not to stay relevant, but to add value to a world she once ruled. Claudia's return wasn't loud. It was elegant, measured, and unbothered by trends. She didn't come back to reclaim the spotlight. She came back because she never needed it in the first place. Claudia Schiffer never chased fame. Fame chased her. She didn't burn bridges, demand attention, or reinvent herself for headlines. She simply stayed true to who she was: elegant, controlled, private, and in doing so, she became one of the most enduring figures in fashion history. Her legacy isn't just in the 1,000 magazine covers, the Chanel runways, or the Billboard campaigns. It's in the quiet rebellion of staying graceful in an industry obsessed with chaos. It's in the way she walked away at her peak, not because she fell, but because she chose peace over performance. Today, Claudia stands as proof that you don't need to expose every scar to be respected. You don't need to be loud to be unforgettable. And you don't need to break to be real. She was the living doll, the ice queen, the face of perfection. But beyond the labels was a woman who never let the world define her. Claudia Schiffer didn't just survive fashion, she transcended it. And maybe, just maybe, that was her greatest magic trick of all.